Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from SimpleProgrammer.com. So, I've had enough. I've had enough of people talking about white male privilege and just using the term privilege in general. And so, yeah, I'm going to piss off a lot of people, but I don't care at this point. I'm going to tell you why the concept of privilege is a screwed up concept. And I'll tell you this, I understand where the people that are talking about privilege come from, and I can understand why if you think in a certain way, you certainly view things that way, and I'm not going to disagree with those points. In fact, you'll probably find, even if you disagree with me, that I agree with you on more than you think about this topic. But I think that it is, in general, a destructive way of looking at the world, and I'm going to tell you why. And before I do, I want to tell you, obviously, I'm for, if you follow this channel, if you follow me, you know that I am for helping as many people as possible. I am for helping you to empower yourself, to achieve what you can, to reach your potential. That's what I'm about. That's why I make this channel. That's what I live my life to do. That's what I encourage other people to do. So the message that I am giving is not one of discriminating against people, or some people are better or less, but it's one of growing yourself, and that's really the reason why that I believe that privilege is such a destructive concept. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about what how I've been the quote how could I put this, the target of some privilege discussions that have actually been harmful to me. But let me talk about, in general, the concept here. So this idea of privilege, right? Most people throw this around as white male privilege or white male cisgender privilege. That one I really dislike, because I refuse to allow the word cisgender into my vocabulary. I'm just not accepting that word. So anyway, a lot of people use that, right? And what they do is they try to say that you don't understand that some people, that just being a white male, whatever it is, right, that you have privilege, you have life is easier for you than people who are, say, a black woman or something like that, right? Or whatever, a Mexican disabled person, okay? And so that's the primary argument that they say, that, okay, you have privilege, you don't even recognize it, and things are easier for you, people treat you better, you have more opportunities and more things in life, whereas other people don't. The problem with this type of thinking, okay, well, I totally agree with what people say in terms of that. This is where I agree with you, right? I agree that if you want to score life on a very objective score, right? Not a subjective one, an objective one, and you want to say, as far as job opportunities and, and facing discrimination and general struggles in life. If you want to say that someone who is Caucasian and is a man and isn't disabled, and is tall and is good looking and is smart and didn't grow up in poverty. If you want to see that they, based on that objective definition, are going to have an easier time in life objectively, right? As far as if you said that there was one objective, one way to define success in the world, then I would say yes, they would have an easier time. Okay, I'm not going to argue that point. But here's the thing. This is why privilege sucks. This is why privilege doesn't make sense. This is why I'll concede that point, but the discussion is flawed and it's a destructive thing. It's because of this. Who is to say what is an advantage in life and what is a disadvantage? I did a video on disadvantages you can check out here. But anyway, I'll repeat that. Who is to say what is an advantage in life and what is a disadvantage? And before you jump all over thinking you know the answer, let's think about this. Let's actually use our brains. Let's not just throw rhetoric around. Let's not just get people incited over using words and throwing around the word privilege. Let's think about this. Is it an advantage in life to be wealthy from birth? Is it? Well, I think most people would say yes, right? But again, this is that objective measure of defining success in one very narrow way, as if it defines everyone the same way and comparing ourselves to other people. But let me tell you this: there's a lot. Can you think of people who were born into wealth and that wealth basically destroyed their life because they're born into wealth? I certainly can. In fact, I would venture to say, just from my experience, which I could be wrong about this, but I think that wealth, a lot of wealth, is more likely to destroy your life. I think it's a disadvantage, right? I think that especially at the extreme levels, that it becomes a severe disadvantage in life. Now, if you're the way that you decide what an advantage is how much money you have or make, or what level of power you reach in the world. Okay, sure, maybe it's an advantage then if we're going to use that score, but that's not the score that I use. I hope you don't use a score where you completely compare yourself to other people, and that's how you score yourself and score everyone else in the world. I really hope you don't, because you're going to be really, really disappointed. I'll get to that. That's my second point about this in a second here. But think about this. Let's flip it around and let's talk about poverty. Okay, is growing up in poverty an advantage or a disadvantage? Again, some people would argue, they would say absolutely it's a disadvantage. Really? So let's think about it. Do you know anyone who the fact that they grew up in poverty made them the successful person that they are? If you don't, I'll tell you what, you're reading the wrong books, because you need to read some books about highly successful people. I'll give you one to start with, Tony Robbins. Look at his story, okay? He grew up in horrible poverty, and because of that poverty, he now feeds millions of people per year, and he's made a lot of money. He's made a lot of success, and he's helped a lot of people, right? There's a ton of people that you can look at through history that have grown up in poverty, and you probably know a lot of them that have become successful. Now, are there plenty of people that have grown up in poverty and have done nothing with their lives and it has destroyed their lives? Yes. Well, has the poverty destroyed it? Right? That's the question. See, this is where we get to. Is it the circumstances in your life? Okay, so different people have different hands that they're dealt, right? And objectively, we could say, oh, this is harder. This is bad, or this is good, right? But we don't know. We don't know which elements are good or bad. I'm going to read you a poem here. Actually, I'm going to read it right out of my soft skills book because I actually put it in here. It's actually by an unknown author. There was once a farmer. One day, the farmer's only horse broke out of the corral and ran away. The farmer's neighbors, all hearing of the horse running away, came to the farmer's house to view the corral. As they stood there, the neighbor said, "Oh, what bad luck." The farmer replied, "How do you know this is bad?" About a week later, the horse returned, bringing with it a whole herd of wild horses, which the farmer and his son quickly corralled. The neighbors, hearing of the corralling of the horses, came to see for themselves. As they stood there looking at the corral filled with horses, the neighbors said, "Oh, what good luck." The farmer replied, "How do you know this is good?" A couple weeks later, the farmer's son's leg was badly broken when he was thrown from one of their wild new horses that he was trying to tame. A few days later, the broken leg became infected and the son became delirious with fever. The neighbors, all hearing of the incident, came to see the son. As they stood there, the neighbor said, "Oh, what bad luck." The farmer replied, "How do you know this is bad?" At that same time in China, a war broke out between two rival warlords. In need of more soldiers, a captain came to the village to conscript young men to fight in the war. When the captain came to take the farmer's son, he found the young man with a broken leg, delirious with fever. Knowing there was no way the son could fight, the captain left him there. A few days later, the son's fever broke. The neighbors, hearing of the son not being taken to fight in the war and of his return to good health, all came to see him. As they stood there, each one of them said, "Oh, what good luck." The farmer replied, "How do you know this is good?" So that's my point here, is that you don't know. You don't know what is an advantage and a disadvantage. You can't know that. And so to say that someone is privileged, to say that someone has things harder or less hard than someone else has it easier, you can't know that because you don't know what hard is. From a very objective, like I said, level, if you're scoring everyone by the same score, if you think that having more money or you think that not facing adversity is an advantage, Well, then sure. Okay, I'll agree with you on that. But adversity is a huge advantage for many people. In fact, I think that adversity is one of the greatest gifts that you can be given. Now, there is such a thing as overwhelming adversity, which could crush you, and it can crush some people. And it's up to the individual. Two people can be put in the same situation and have the same amount of adversity, and one person can thrive and become great because of it, and another person can become completely crushed by it, right? That's all about personal choice and character and who you are and what you're willing to do. And that is what I believe in. And that is why I believe the whole discussion of privilege is counterproductive, right? We use the word privilege, but when we say privilege, what we're really saying is we're not saying white male privilege. We're saying underprivileged to other people. We're calling anyone who doesn't meet our definition of what is an advantage in life and privilege underprivileged. In fact, another word for that is handicap. So should you go up to people who are not, quote, privileged and call them handicap and say, I'm sorry because of your handicap? Nothing wrong with handicapped people. They're great. I don't have any problem with handicapped people, but I think a lot of people would be insulted if you called them handicapped. That's the same thing as calling them underprivileged, which is the same thing as calling someone who's privileged. You are the one making the judgment and deciding what makes someone's life better or easier than another. Now, let's get to the second point of this. The second point of this, the second problem with this is that when you talk in terms of privilege, when you try to create an objective truth for what is good and what is bad and what is an advantage and what is a disadvantage in life, what you do is you encourage people to compare themselves to one standard and to each other. And that is wrong. And I'll tell you why. Because of different contexts, because of different people growing up in different situations and having different advantages and disadvantages, they should not be comparing themselves. In fact, it's just not an unhealthy thing to compare yourself to someone else. In fact, I did a video on this called you should only compare yourself to yourself, right? And I did another video about looking in the mirror, I think, unless they're the same video. But anyway, the point is this. Look, this is just a destructive mindset. Why would you compare yourself to someone else? You know who I compare myself to? I compare myself to who I was yesterday, to who I was last year, to who I was 5 years ago. In fact, I did a video on who I was 7 years ago, and you can see that video. And that's who I'm comparing myself to, because that's what's important to me, and that's what we should be encouraging people to do, not to compare themselves to others, not to define success by how much money they make, or how high they rise in a company, or if they're the CEO, or if they're on the executive team, or if they're making as much money as someone else. That stuff doesn't matter. How good are they doing compared to where they were? They should be comparing themselves to themselves, and more importantly, to their potential. I want you to live up to your potential. I don't want to discourage you by saying, oh, you're not privileged, or saying you're underprivileged, or saying you're handicapped. I want to say, no, you are, given what you have, what circumstances you have the ability to maximize your potential. And what's important is not what other people are doing. It's not important how much money other people are making or comparing yourself to them. What's important is, what did you do with what you have? Right? What did you do with what you have? I'm not giving you a pass. I'm not giving you a pass because someone else had it easier than you and because you were underprivileged. In fact, I want you to take the hardness, the way that life was more difficult for you, and I want you to turn that into a super advantage, right? So what? Someone has to work twice as hard to get in the same position that you are. Great. Do you know what? When you're in the same position, you're not the same. You know why? Because if given two people, right? If I had a choice, if I had two people, and one person, okay, they got into their position easy. It came easy for them because they were, quote, privileged. And the second person had to work their butt off twice as hard, 3 times as hard to get to that same position. All other things being equal, guess who I'm picking for promotion or for my job, or who I want working for me, who I want on my team? The person who had to work 2 to 3 times as hard. Because you know why? because all other things being equal, the thing that they're going to have is grit. They're going to have perseverance. That adversity, that thing that made it so that they had a quote disadvantage, so that they had to work 2 to 3 times as hard, that's now an advantage. Now they are tough as nails. That person is tough. They're not equal. They're above equal. You see what I'm saying? I don't want equality. I want disproportionate rewards. I want, if you work harder, you get more, right? And it's not just in money, okay? It's not just in money. See, this is the thing. This is the biggest problem with the whole privilege thing. It's not about money. That's not the most important thing. What's important is you reaching your potential, you growing into your potential. So anyway, I'm not going to discuss this topic again. That's my view on privilege. And you know, a lot of people have, I don't even know why someone would call me, white male privilege. I don't even look, I mean, I don't even look like I'm white. Fine, some people maybe think so, but I don't know, what the heck even am I, right? So it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to try and classify people, to try and define, and when you try to tell someone that they're privileged, you try to take a few characteristics about them and decide that their whole life must be harder or easier than someone else. And you can't do that. You can't look at someone's skin color and determine what their life was like, or whether they had advantages or disadvantages. You don't know. It all depends on context too, right? What if you look at someone who was who would be discriminated, quote, discriminated against in the U.S., but they didn't grow up in the U.S. They grew up somewhere where white people were discriminated against. There's plenty of places in the planet where that's the case. So how would you know, right? You're just gonna look at their skin color and say that they are privileged or not privileged, or right? Are you gonna define what's an advantage or a disadvantage? I don't think so. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of effort, it's a waste of energy. As I said before, I put a tweet on this and I said privilege is the way that people excuse their failures for someone else's success. And that's true. And if you use that word, and if you want to hold on to it, that's what you're doing. And if you want to compare yourself to others, go ahead. Go ahead and use privilege. Go ahead and define that. Go ahead and use that as an excuse. But if you want to maximize your own potential, if you want to live up to your potential, forget it. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't, what other people do, what other people had, what other people started with, what advantages or disadvantages you perceive that other people have, has nothing to do with you and your potential and improving yourself. And that's what I'm about. I'm about giving everyone the chance to do the best that they can with what they have and to maximize their own potential. And if you disagree with that, fine, unsubscribe. I don't care. I don't want you around. I want people who want to empower other people, not people who want to disempower other people by labeling them in any way and telling them that they have disadvantages when you don't know. So, if you like this video, I appreciate your support. Subscribe. You can click below to subscribe. If you don't like the video and you think that I'm just a jackass, unsubscribe, downvote it, do whatever you gotta do. But I'm gonna keep on doing what I gotta do. Talk to you next time.